Welcome to Credit and Coffee. Today, I'm sharing my journey of letting go of a high-paying, unfulfilling career to rediscover true happiness in the simple things. The hum of the espresso machine used to be my alarm clock, not a comforting sound, but a signal that another day of chasing someone else's dream had begun, another day of putting on the polished veneer that hid the quiet desperation gnawing at my insides. It was a ritual born of necessity, not enjoyment, a quick jolt before the long commute into the city, where my life felt like it belonged to a tech company and its investors, not to me. The scent of bitter coffee mingling with the faint metallic tang of the city air as I stepped out each morning, a constant reminder of the unyielding grind that awaited, a daily assault on my senses and my spirit, the cold metal of the subway handrail biting into my palm, the press of anonymous bodies, a suffocating embrace, all part of the unspoken contract, the invisible chains. My corner office offered a stunning view of the skyline, a panoramic sweep of gleaming glass and steel that stretched to the horizon, a testament to years of relentless work, a symbol of the success my parents had always dreamed for me, a success measured in the size of my income, the value of my stock options, the perceived security of my generous insurance package, and the substantial balance in my various investment accounts, funds diligently managed and diversified across various sectors. Yet looking out from that lofty perch, all I ever felt was a profound sense of isolation, a stark emptiness that the high salary, the gleaming mahogany desk, and the endless stream of impressive clients could never fill, the city lights shimmering below like a scattered collection of distant, indifferent stars, never quite reaching the core of my being, the polished surface of the massive oak desk reflecting a distorted image of myself, a man I barely recognized, his eyes hollowed by unspoken burdens. His smile a practiced artifice. The psychological weight of these golden handcuffs was immense, a heavy chain forged from a six-figure income and a mortgage that dwarfed our previous modest home, trapping me in a life I increasingly disliked, a gilded cage with plush carpeting and bespoke furniture. It was a life where every decision seemed to revolve around maintaining a certain status, a certain image, where the pressure of being house poor despite earning so much was a constant. Low-level hum of anxiety beneath the surface of our meticulously curated existence, a quiet thrumming in my ears that sometimes drowned out even the sound of my own thoughts, leaving me feeling hollow, like an exquisitely crafted shell with nothing inside, the weight of the silk tie around my neck feeling like a noose, subtly tightening with each passing quarter. Every morning, as the car glided effortlessly through the manicured streets of our neighborhood, past the perfectly symmetrical hedges and the imposing wrought iron gates, a faint sense of dread would curdle in my stomach, a cold knot of apprehension that tightened with every mile closer to the gleaming towers of the financial district. I would run through the day's impending meetings, the complex risk assessments, the aggressive market forecasts I was expected to deliver. The intricate web of investment strategies I had to master and present with unwavering confidence, a confidence I rarely felt, knowing that behind the numbers were real people's futures, their pension funds, their dreams of passive income, all entrusted to my carefully constructed facade of expertise. The air in the office, recycled and faintly metallic, carried the ghost of 1,000 ambition-fueled conversations, a subtle pressure that seeped into my pores, reminding me of the constant competition, the need to always be sharper, smarter, more ruthless, to constantly prove my worth to the anonymous board members and the powerful institutional investors whose shadows loomed large over my daily existence. My wife often spoke of the comfort our substantial income provided, the private school tuition for our children that promised them a brighter future, the luxury vacations to sun-drenched beaches and snow-capped mountains, the designer clothes that filled her closet, the almost limitless credit available to us, a constant reassurance that we were living the good life, but I could see the subtle strain in her eyes, too. The way she'd flinch when I mentioned a looming bill for a home renovation project or the annual property taxes, the quiet sigh when I came home late again, smelling of recycled office air and the stale scent of ambition, the faint, lingering aroma of the expensive cologne I wore to project an image of effortless success. She knew, without me ever having to say it, that something was deeply wrong, that the price tag on my soul was slowly climbing, though neither of us dared to acknowledge it out loud. Fearing that to speak it would be to make it undeniably real, to give form to the shapeless dread that haunted our opulent nights and anxious days, the rustle of her silk dressing gown in the quiet hours of dawn was often the only sound, a whisper of a life slowly unraveling. We lived in an affluent neighborhood, where manicured lawns and late-model luxury cars, polished to a high sheen, were the norm, where every casual conversation with a friend or neighbor felt like a subtle competition of who had the latest gadget, whose children were excelling more in their various endeavors, whose investments were performing better in the volatile market. There was a professional jealousy that permeated these superficial friendships, a constant comparison that poisoned every interaction. Making it impossible to truly connect, to genuinely relax. I remember sitting at a backyard barbecue, the scent of grilling steak and expensive wine wafting through the meticulously kept garden, listening to a friend boast about his impressive passive income from a new venture, his voice a little too loud, a little too confident, while I nodded along, a forced smile plastered to my face, my mind churning with the endless hours I put into a job that offered no real joy, just the promise of more. More things, more emptiness. The clinking of ice in my glass felt like a subtle accusation, a reminder of the quiet compromises I was making, the cloying sweetness of the fruit tart offered by our hostess tasting like ashes in my mouth. My personal investments were mostly in the stock market, a portfolio carefully managed by a financial advisor who always spoke in hushed, reverent tones about risk management and market trends, reassuring me that my future was secure, that our diversified holdings would weather any storm. But my heart wasn't in it, not anymore. I was just going through the motions, watching numbers fluctuate on a screen, feeling nothing but a detached sense of obligation. The thrill of growth long replaced by a dull anxiety about potential losses, the soft glow of the monitor reflecting my tired face, a silent testament to the erosion of my passion. My earliest financial burdens, student loans from a prestigious university that had opened so many doors, were long paid off, but their ghost lingered, a reminder of the path I had chosen, a path laid out by expectations, not by genuine desire, a path that had promised fulfillment but delivered only a gilded cage. The memory of those early days, fresh-faced and optimistic, now seemed like a cruel joke. The anxiety about inflation and rising costs was a quiet constant, too, always in the background, making our high income feel less secure than it truly was, as if the ground beneath our gilded cage was slowly eroding, demanding more and more just to stay in place. To maintain the illusion of unshakable prosperity, the subtle creak of the floorboards beneath my feet felt like a harbinger of unseen cracks, and every grocery bill, despite our ample income, felt like a small, personal defeat. A reminder of how quickly even vast sums could be eaten away by the relentless march of time and rising prices. The weight of the credit card in my wallet felt heavier than usual. Then came the phone call, late one Tuesday evening, the digital clock on the kitchen microwave glowing an insistent red, its numbers a stark contrast to the growing darkness outside, my father's voice tired and defeated, a weariness I had never heard before, telling me the family business, the one my grandfather had built from scratch with calloused hands and unwavering dedication, the very smell of sawdust and honest labor still clinging to my childhood memories, was struggling, deeply struggling. The slow decline had accelerated, a combination of changing market demands and his own advancing age, coupled with an unexpected downturn in a key supply chain, a series of unfortunate events that felt like a cascade of falling dominoes. It was a blow that shook me to my core, adding another layer of pressure, the weight of being in the sandwich generation, trying to support my aging parents while also maintaining the demanding lifestyle I had cultivated for my own family. Suddenly, my high income felt less like a comfort and more like a cruel, inescapable obligation, a heavy cloak draped over my already burdened shoulders. The silence on the other end of the line, after his confession, was more deafening than any shout, echoing the emptiness I felt inside. I remember standing in the kitchen, the scent of my wife's carefully prepared dinner, a gourmet meal that now felt utterly pointless, wafting around me, a rich aroma of rosemary and roasted vegetables that seemed to mock my inner turmoil. I wanted to tell her everything about the profound exhaustion that seeped into my bones, the moral compromises I was making at work, the gnawing feeling that I was selling off pieces of myself every day, trading my integrity for a bonus, but I couldn't, not yet. The fear of losing the outward appearance of success, of destabilizing the life we had built, a fragile edifice resting on a mountain of unspoken anxieties, was too great, so I kept silent, a secret debt of the soul accumulating, more insidious than any financial one. The quiet hum of the refrigerator in the background was the only sound accompanying my silent despair, a mournful drone that mirrored the thrumming in my own chest. The days that followed blurred into a relentless cycle of corporate demands and personal anxieties, each morning a fresh onslaught of emails, each evening a quiet retreat into a restless sleep, punctuated by dreams of collapsing stock charts and an ever-receding horizon of peace. I began to find excuses to stay late at the office, the sterile environment feeling ironically more honest than the false cheer of my own home. The late-night fluorescent hum a strangely comforting companion as I pored over spreadsheets, trying to find a solution that didn't exist, a way to square the circle of my immense obligations with my dwindling spirit. The weight of my father's words, his quiet resignation, pressed down on me, a constant reminder of the legacy I was failing to uphold, the family business, a tangible piece of our history, slowly slipping away, and with it, a part of my own identity. I would gaze out my office window, no longer seeing the glittering city as a symbol of achievement, but as a vast, indifferent monument to the very system that had ensnared me, the ceaseless movement of traffic below a dizzying reflection of my own frantic, directionless internal motion. That period was a blur of endless meetings, forced smiles, and the constant hum of a mind always calculating, always strategizing, always trying to justify the compromises. The quiet desperation of keeping up appearances was exhausting. Every expensive watch, its polished face reflecting the cold office lights, every perfectly tailored suit that felt like a uniform, a heavy costume I wore each day, every carefully planned vacation to exotic locales felt like a performance. A lie designed to reassure myself and others that I was still in control, still thriving, still happy, but each charade only deepened the sense of hollowness within, the rich texture of the hotel sheets feeling ironically coarse against my skin, the vibrant hues of tropical sunsets failing to penetrate the grayness of my mood. Then an inheritance arrived, a surprisingly large sum from a distant relative I barely knew, a great-aunt whose existence I had vaguely acknowledged but never truly connected with, a woman I remembered only as a faint, lavender-scented presence at infrequent family gatherings, her quiet benevolence now echoing through my tumultuous life in the form of a substantial legal document. It should have been a relief, a windfall, a chance to breathe, a true financial buffer, but it only added to the complexity. My sibling, with whom I had always had a strained relationship, a quiet rivalry that simmered beneath the surface of family gatherings, a subtle competition for parental approval and academic achievement that had evolved into a more bitter contest for perceived success, immediately saw it as an opportunity for personal gain, leading to a bitter financial dispute that fractured our family dynamic even further, adding another layer of stress to an already overflowing plate, the calls from lawyers. Their voices dry and impersonal, the endless discussions of probate, the rereading of intricate clauses, all served to drain away any joy the unexpected inheritance might have offered, leaving behind only the bitter taste of familial discord and legal expenses. The legal battles over the inheritance dragged on for months, a draining, emotionally exhausting process that chipped away at my dwindling reserves of patience and optimism. Each letter from the solicitors, each scheduled conference call, felt like another weight added to an already tottering stack of burdens. My siblings' arguments, though technically valid in some aspects of the will's language, felt rooted in a deep-seated resentment, a desire to seize every last penny, even at the cost of our already fragile familial bond. I found myself reviewing old family photos, trying to locate the source of this long-standing rift, searching for clues in the forced smiles of childhood, the subtle glances exchanged between parents, but it remained elusive, a nebulous undercurrent of envy that had finally found an outlet in the substantial sum now at stake. The fight for the inheritance was less about the money itself and more about the fundamental injustice I felt, the perceived betrayal, the way a lifeline had been twisted into another source of pain, another debt on my emotional ledger. Around the same time, a friend, someone I had trusted for years, since our university days, a man whose easy laughter and shared youthful dreams I still occasionally longed for, came to me with an investment opportunity, his eyes bright with an almost evangelical fervor, a promising startup in a booming sector, specifically AI-driven analytics for niche markets. He swore it was a sure thing, a chance to diversify my portfolio. To finally build some real passive income that wasn't tied to my soul-crushing job, a way to escape the golden handcuffs, to free myself from the daily grind and reclaim my life. He painted a vivid picture of a future where early investors would reap immense rewards, a new era of digital prosperity. I poured a significant portion of my inheritance, and then some, drawing on a credit line I had sworn never to touch, a line of credit I had always viewed as an emergency parachute, into his venture, swayed by his infectious enthusiasm and my own desperate hope for a way out. It felt like a gamble, a risky play, a wild card I was throwing into the carefully managed deck of my life, but the promise of freedom, the intoxicating vision of an alternative future, was too alluring to resist. The numbers on his projections, though perhaps overly optimistic, painted a picture of quick, substantial returns, a mirage shimmering on the horizon of my desperation. The late-night meetings with my friend, fueled by strong coffee and a heady mix of excitement and apprehension, became a clandestine ritual. He would meticulously detail the market analysis, the projected growth curves, the proprietary algorithms that were supposedly revolutionary, each slide of his presentation shimmering with the promise of unprecedented returns. He spoke of early adopters, of disrupting established industries, of a future where my investment would multiply exponentially, freeing me from the shackles of my corporate existence. I found myself nodding along, caught in the intoxicating current of his ambition, my own judgment clouded by a profound weariness and a desperate yearning for a different path. The financial models he presented, complex and filled with jargon I normally scrutinized with a cynical eye, now seemed utterly convincing, my rational mind overridden by the emotional appeal of escape. I started dreaming of the day I could walk away from my corner office, from the endless meetings, from the constant pressure to deliver, to finally have enough passive income to dictate my own terms, to finally breathe. I also dabbled in cryptocurrencies, lured by the stories of overnight millionaires and the rapid ascent of digital assets. Bitcoin and other digital assets seemed like a modern gold rush, a way to escape the slow, methodical grind of traditional investments, the dull, predictable returns. I told myself it was sound risk management, just a small percentage of my assets, a speculative allocation to balance my conservative portfolio. A calculated diversification to hedge against market volatility, but the thrill of watching the numbers surge, then plummet, became an addiction in itself. A silent, secret habit I kept from my wife, another layer of hidden debt, not just financial, but emotional, a constant source of internal tension, the glow of the trading app on my phone at 3 a.m., a lonely, clandestine comfort. Its blue light illuminating the anxiety etched on my face as I watched my digital fortune rise and fall with agonizing speed, the fear of missing out, of being left behind by this new financial frontier, a potent, almost irresistible siren song. My portfolio, once a source of reassuring stability, became a volatile battleground of hope and dread, the constant ping of notifications from various trading platforms, a jarring accompaniment to my already strained nerves. The world of digital assets felt like a wild, untamed frontier, a stark contrast to the staid, predictable world of traditional stocks and bonds I had always inhabited. It promised immediate gratification, the fantasy of escaping the slow burn of conventional wealth building, and in my desperation I embraced it, convincing myself that I was being astute, forward-thinking, when in reality I was simply grasping at straws, succumbing to a dangerous blend of greed and fear. The startup collapsed spectacularly, almost overnight, its grand promises dissolving into bankruptcy filings and recriminations, wiping out not just my investment, but my friend's reputation and a good chunk of my carefully constructed financial buffer. The betrayal cut deep, not just the financial loss, the cold, stark reality of seeing those digital numbers disappear, a stark emptiness on my investment statements, but the realization that my trust had been so easily exploited. That my desperation had made me blind, the regret of following bad investment advice from a friend festered, a constant reminder of my own naive desperation, a bitter taste in my mouth that no amount of expensive coffee could wash away, the acrid scent of failure clinging to everything, permeating even the most mundane moments of my day. The news of the collapse came through a terse email, a cold, impersonal notification that felt like a punch to the gut. I remember staring at the screen, the words blurring before my eyes, the immense weight of the loss pressing down on me, suffocating me. The phone call to my friend after several unanswered attempts was strained, filled with his own desperate apologies and a hollow echo of the promises he'd made, his voice thin, reedy, utterly devoid of the evangelical fervor that had once captivated me. The financial advisor, a man who had once spoken of my portfolio with quiet reverence, now spoke with a veiled concern, delicately suggesting a complete reevaluation of my risk management strategies, his words a polite but firm reprimand. The cryptocurrency market followed suit, a dramatic downturn that decimated my smaller, yet still significant, holdings, the digital dream turning into a digital nightmare, the volatile peaks and troughs giving way to a relentless downward spiral that bled my accounts dry, a final brutal blow that left me reeling, the illusion of my financial security shattered, revealing the precariousness beneath, the flimsy scaffolding holding up my carefully constructed life. The daily checks of the crypto market became a form of self-torture, watching the red numbers proliferate, each percentage point drop a tiny shard of glass in my already wounded psyche. The bright, optimistic colors of the trading apps turned menacing, reflecting the escalating anxiety that gnawed at my stomach. I stopped sleeping soundly, every rustle outside my window, every creak of the house, magnified into a potential harbinger of more bad news. The quiet hum of the server rack somewhere in the tech company building seemed to mock my shattered dreams of digital wealth. My wife noticed the change, the way I'd stare blankly at dinner, the food growing cold on my plate, a meticulously prepared meal now tasting like ash, the tremor in my hands when I poured my evening scotch, the sudden, uncharacteristic irritability that would flare at the slightest provocation, a brittle defensiveness replacing my usual calm demeanor. She started asking questions, soft at first, gentle inquiries about my day, her voice laced with a tentative concern, then more insistent. Her voice laced with a deeper concern that I, in my crumbling state, interpreted as accusation, as if she were interrogating me, her worried gaze feeling like a spotlight exposing my every failing. The day she found the hidden statements, the ones detailing the startup losses and the cryptocurrency failures, neatly tucked away in a drawer I thought was secure, a drawer I had hoped would keep my secrets safe, was the day our marriage truly cracked, the marital strain from secret debt and risky investments. A silent current for so long became a raging torrent, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mix of hurt and anger, a deep, wounded betrayal that I saw clearly reflected in her tear-filled eyes. She held the papers like a terrible accusation. Her betrayal wasn't about the money, she said, her voice shaking, barely a whisper. It was about the secrecy, the lack of trust, the way I had shouldered such a burden alone, allowing it to eat away at us both in the darkness, allowing my own fear to poison the foundation of our shared life. The argument that followed was unlike any we had ever had, not a raised voice, but a quiet, chilling unraveling of years of unspoken resentments and unacknowledged fears. The silence after her words was deafening, filled with the echoes of our shattered trust, the clatter of the expensive dinner plates she set down with trembling hands, a harsh counterpoint to the quiet devastation in the room. The air grew thick with unspoken apologies and unbridgeable gaps, the carefully curated perfection of our home feeling like a hollow stage set for a tragedy. It wasn't long after that the call came from the company, a clinical, detached voice informing me of a restructuring, a strategic realignment. They called it, their words carefully chosen to mask the brutal reality, the euphemisms a thin veil over the sharp edge of corporate ruthlessness. I was being laid off, my services were no longer required, the golden handcuffs snapped open. But instead of relief, I felt a crushing weight. The emotional toll of a layoff was immediate and profound. A wave of shame and fear washing over me, the floor seemed to drop out from under my feet, leaving me suspended in a dizzying void of uncertainty, the hum of the office air conditioning suddenly silent, replaced by a terrifying quietude. The HR representative, her face carefully neutral, recited the severance package details in a flat, businesslike tone, each word a further confirmation of my newfound expendability. I remember walking out of the building for the last time, the cold autumn wind whipping around me, carrying the faint scent of exhaust fumes and damp leaves, the glass doors of the grand lobby reflecting a stranger, a man stripped of his purpose, his identity. The very streets I had walked with such confident purpose now seemed to gape open, revealing an abyss of an uncertain future. The six-figure income vanished overnight, replaced by the grim reality of unemployment benefits that felt like a pittance, a meager offering compared to the life I had known, and the rapidly dwindling savings that had once seemed inexhaustible, a substantial sum now evaporating with alarming speed. The weight of the mortgage, once a symbol of success and stability, became an unbearable burden, its monthly demand a constant, terrifying echo in our suddenly quiet home. We were truly house poor now. Drowning in debt, the vast rooms feeling cavernous and empty, mocking our previous aspirations, each expensive piece of furniture a monument to a life we could no longer afford. The daily routine of checking job boards, polishing my resume, and sending out applications became a monotonous, soul-crushing exercise in rejection. Each polite refusal, each deafening silence, chipped away further at my self-esteem. The scent of stale coffee in the local cafe, where I spent hours on my laptop, trying to project an air of productivity, became the bitter aroma of my failure. We tried to make it work, my wife and I, tried to patch the cracks in our marriage, to salvage what was left of our shared history, but the foundation had been eroded by years of unspoken resentments and the recent financial earthquake. The arguments became more frequent, more vicious, our words like daggers, cutting deep, until one day, in a quiet, painful conversation that left us both emotionally raw and utterly depleted. Sitting across from each other at the gleaming dining table that now felt like a battlefield, we agreed to divorce, a casualty of the financial crisis I had unwittingly created. The beautiful house, the symbol of our once aspirational life, had to be sold, every asset liquidated, every investment scrutinized, every debt meticulously accounted for, its market value suddenly seeming insignificant compared to the human cost. The silent closing of the front door behind the last of the movers echoing the finality of our separation. The process of selling the house was a protracted, agonizing affair. Each open house, each potential buyer scrutinizing our possessions, felt like a public autopsy of our failed dreams. We walked through the empty rooms, the echoes of our children's laughter and our own shared moments now replaced by a vast, hollow silence, the scent of fresh paint and air freshener failing to mask the lingering scent of sorrow and regret. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen artwork, every tangible representation of our life together was itemized, valued, and then sold, each transaction a further stripping away of our past. The once vibrant garden, with its meticulously tended roses and fragrant herbs, now seemed to wither under the weight of our sadness. Bankruptcy followed, a stark, humiliating declaration of financial failure. The process was soul-crushing, stripping away not just my material possessions, the expensive art, the designer furniture, the luxury car, even the smallest trinkets that held sentimental value, but a significant portion of my dignity. I watched as my life, once so carefully constructed, unraveled before my eyes, piece by painful piece, leaving behind a profound sense of naked vulnerability, the lawyer's polite, regretful voice a distant hum as I signed away years of work, years of striving, years of illusions. The legal meetings, held in a drab office with peeling paint, felt like a walk through a valley of shadows. Each document I signed, each question I answered, was a formal acknowledgement of my utter failure. The air in the room was thick with the scent of old paper and stale coffee, mirroring the heaviness in my chest. I remembered the days when my signature commanded respect on multi-million-dollar deals, and now it was merely a symbol of surrender, of defeat. The feeling of shame was a raw, exposed nerve, flaring with every interaction, every glance from the people who now saw me only as a statistic, a cautionary tale of financial ruin. Then, as if the universe hadn't dealt enough blows, a sudden medical emergency struck my aging mother, a major illness requiring extensive specialized treatment, a terrifying diagnosis that sent a cold wave of fear through me, her frail hand in mine, her eyes clouded with pain, the crushing medical debt piled on top of everything else, an insurmountable peak in an already desolate landscape, the hospital corridors smelling of antiseptic and despair, her quiet brave face a stark reminder of my own helplessness. The pressure of being in the sandwich generation became an almost unbearable weight, knowing I couldn't provide the financial support my parents desperately needed, a son unable to care for his own, a profound personal failure that cut deeper than any financial loss, the quiet whir of the medical equipment in her room, a constant, unsettling presence. The hospital waiting rooms became a new, unwanted familiar territory, the muted televisions, the worn chairs, the hushed, anxious conversations of other families, all blending into a tapestry of shared vulnerability. I spent hours there, watching my mother's struggle, feeling the profound inadequacy of my inability to alleviate her suffering, to shoulder the financial burden that was now a chasm between her need and my resources. The mounting medical bills, stark figures on white paper, seemed to mock my former income, my past life of perceived abundance, now a cruel memory, a distant echo. The emotional toll of her illness, compounded by my own recent losses, left me utterly drained, hollowed out, as if every ounce of my emotional resilience had been stripped away. I took any job I could find, a midlife career change forced upon me, far removed from the boardrooms and high-stakes deals of my previous life. It was a retail position, folding clothes and stocking shelves in a brightly lit, impersonal department store, a stark contrast to my former existence. The crisp cotton shirts a world away from the silk ties I once wore. The instability of it all was terrifying, but there was a strange, unexpected peace in its simplicity. In the rhythm of menial tasks that required only my hands, not my fractured mind, the scent of new fabric and cleaning supplies a sharp, clean break from the stale ambition of the corporate world. The heavy thud of the security gates opening in the early morning, the quiet whir of the cleaning machine, the rhythmic folding of sweaters, each task a small, tangible anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The forced smiles I once wore in client meetings now felt genuine, as I helped a customer find the right size or offered a simple suggestion. There was no pretense, no elaborate performance, just the honest exchange of a product for a price, a transaction untainted by the complex web of market manipulation and financial jargon that had once dominated my life. The chill of the early morning air as I walked to work, past shuttered shops and sleeping houses, invigorated me in a way the temperature-controlled office building never had. The physical labor, though often tiring, offered a different kind of exhaustion, a wholesome fatigue that eventually led to a more restful, dreamless sleep. The first few months were a fog of grief and regret, of waking up in a small, rented apartment, the walls thin enough to hear my neighbors' quiet conversations, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of a TV, the chill of the morning air seeping in through the old windows. Carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant traffic, I'd make coffee in a cheap drip machine, its gurgling sounds a comforting counterpoint to the quiet solitude, the aroma a stark, unsophisticated comfort. Nothing like the artisanal lattes of my past, and I'd sit at the small, wobbly kitchen table, surrounded by bills, contemplating the wreckage of my life, the ghost of my former self, a quiet, shaming presence in the room, his expensive tastes and grand ambitions now a cruel, distant memory. The worn linoleum under my bare feet was cold, a stark reminder of the luxurious Persian rugs I once took for granted. The simple, chipped ceramic mug in my hands felt heavy, grounding, a tangible connection to this new, stripped-down reality. The bills, laid out like a battlefield, were a constant challenge, demanding meticulous attention to every single expense, every last penny. I meticulously tracked every item on my supermarket menu, a detailed budget now my most trusted companion, ensuring that every purchase was justified, every need prioritized over every want. The silence in the small apartment, broken only by the occasional hum of the old refrigerator, forced me to confront my own thoughts, my own grief, my own failings, with nowhere to hide. I missed my wife, not just her physical presence, but the comfortable rhythm of our shared life, the subtle understanding between us, the future we had envisioned, flawed though it was. The quiet ache of that loss was a constant companion, a dull throb beneath the surface of my daily existence, a ghost of a touch, a forgotten scent, a phantom weight beside me in the too-large bed. I missed the sound of her voice calling my name, the way her hand fit perfectly in mine, the unspoken language of our years together. The empty side of the bed, perfectly smooth and untouched, was a stark daily reminder of the intimacy I had lost, the companionship I had squandered. The memory of her eyes, wide with betrayal, often returned to haunt me in the quiet moments, a sharp, searing pain that no amount of self-flagellation could erase. I yearned for a chance to rewind, to undo the choices that had led to such profound separation, to whisper apologies into the cold, empty air. There were moments, though small, almost imperceptible moments, when a tiny sliver of light would break through the gloom, a genuine smile from a kind colleague at my new job, a young woman who hummed softly as she folded sweaters, her genuine warmth a stark contrast to the performative politeness of my old corporate world, her simple, unburdened joy a surprising comfort, the simple satisfaction of tidying a shelf, aligning items perfectly, seeing the colors of the fabric blend harmoniously. And seeing the order emerge from chaos, the quiet warmth of a mug of cheap coffee in my hands on a cold morning, its gentle steam a fragile wisp against the pale light filtering through the window, a small, tangible comfort, a moment of unadulterated peace. I remember the scent of freshly laundered linen, a simple, clean fragrance that cleared my head, a tangible sensation that brought me back to the present moment, away from the swirling regrets of the past. One afternoon, a young customer, no older than my own child, thanked me with such genuine sincerity for helping him find a gift for his mother, his face alight with gratitude, that it brought an unexpected, fierce warmth to my chest, a small, potent reminder of the pure, unvarnished goodness that still existed in the world, a direct, uncomplicated human connection that had been so conspicuously absent from my gilded cage. These tiny, unbidden moments of connection and simple accomplishment were like delicate rays of sunlight piercing through the thick clouds of my despair, offering a glimpse of a different kind of richness, a wealth not measured in currency or market capitalization, but in the quiet, undeniable value of human interaction and honest effort. I started taking long walks, something I never had time for before, just wandering through local parks, observing the patterns of leaves, the way the light fell through the branches of ancient oaks, dappling the path in shifting gold and shadow, the distant sounds of children playing, their joyful shouts echoing through the quiet air, their innocence a stark, beautiful contrast to my own weary cynicism. These were the unseen joys I had been blind to for so long, overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of more, of bigger. Of better, of an elusive financial freedom that had only led to deeper chains, the rough bark of a tree under my fingertips, the earthy scent of damp soil, the crisp crunch of fallen leaves underfoot, each sensation a gentle, grounding reminder of the world beyond spreadsheets and stock tickers. I discovered hidden pathways, quiet benches tucked away from the main thoroughfares, small patches of wildflowers pushing through cracks in the pavement, their vibrant colors a tenacious declaration of life. The rhythmic pounding of my feet on the asphalt, then the softer give of the dirt path, became a meditative cadence, a slow, steady drumbeat against the frantic anxieties that still occasionally tried to resurface. The cold air filling my lungs, carrying the distinct smell of wood smoke from a distant chimney, felt cleansing, purifying, chasing away the stale, recycled air of my past. I watched elderly couples stroll hand in hand, their faces etched with the quiet wisdom of shared decades, and felt a pang of bittersweet longing, but also a burgeoning appreciation for the simple, enduring beauty of human connection, the profound value of a life lived not in the fast lane, but in the gentle ebb and flow of everyday existence. My new budget was tight, meticulously planned, every penny accounted for, a stark ledger of scarcity. It was a far cry from the limitless spending of my former life, where credit cards flowed freely and income seemed to magically replenish, but it brought a surprising sense of control, of mastery over my circumstances rather than being controlled by them. The simple act of balancing my accounts, however small, became a point of quiet pride, a step towards genuine independence. A tangible manifestation of self-reliance, the careful rationing of a single cup of coffee, brewed at home, tasting sweeter than any expensive espresso from my past. I kept a small, worn notebook, its pages filled with neat columns of numbers, a testament to my newfound discipline. Each entry, each calculated expense was a conscious choice, a rejection of the mindless consumption that had once defined my life. The sense of anxiety about rising costs still occasionally surfaced, a phantom limb of my former worries, but now it was met with a clear plan, a tangible strategy, rather than a vague, overwhelming dread. I found a surprising satisfaction in the simplicity, in making do with less, in discovering that true abundance wasn't about having more, but about appreciating what was already there, the quiet dignity of living within my means. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild, not my fortune, but my life, my sense of self, like a potter reshaping clay. I learned to cook simple, wholesome meals, finding joy in the act of creation, in the smells of fresh garlic and herbs filling my tiny kitchen, the satisfying sizzle of vegetables in a pan, the warmth spreading through the small space, a comfort more profound than any gourmet restaurant meal, a tangible, earthy pleasure, far removed from the sterile perfection of Michelin-starred dining. The quiet bubbling of a simmering pot, a melody of domestic contentment. I experimented with new recipes, discovering the surprising versatility of simple ingredients. The aroma of baking bread, a rare treat, would fill the small apartment with a warmth that felt like a hug, a primal comfort that transcended any material luxury. The act of kneading dough, feeling the elastic texture of the flour and water transform under my hands, was a meditative process, connecting me to something ancient and fundamental. The first perfectly browned crust, the first flavorful broth, was a small victory, a testament to my ability to create, to sustain, to nourish, not just my body, but my spirit. I reconnected with an old friend, one who had moved away years ago, someone who knew me before the golden handcuffs had tightened their grip, before the pressure had transformed me. His voice on the phone, familiar and comforting, a melody from a forgotten past. Our conversations were simple, honest, devoid of any financial comparisons or professional jealousy, just genuine connection, shared memories, and quiet laughter. It was a moment of true support, a lifeline in my solitude. A reminder of the person I once was and still could be, a gentle hand extended in the darkness. We met at a nondescript diner, far from the bustling, pretentious establishments of my former life. The scent of frying bacon and cheap coffee filled the air, a humble aroma that felt more authentic than any fine dining experience. We talked for hours, sifting through shared histories, reminiscing about college antics, laughing about old mistakes. He listened patiently as I recounted the unraveling of my life, not with judgment, but with an empathetic understanding that felt like a healing balm. His presence was a quiet anchor, a tangible link to a past self that I thought was irrevocably lost, a reminder that not all connections were transactional, not all friendships were built on the shaky foundations of ambition and superficiality. The quiet, the absence of the relentless pressure, the constant hum of ambition and competition became a balm for my frayed nerves. I realized how much noise I had allowed into my life, how much external validation I had craved, how little I had truly listened to my own inner voice, a whisper that had always been there beneath the din, a quiet, persistent yearning for something more real, something more authentic that I had so consistently ignored. The silence in my small apartment, once daunting, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where my thoughts could finally settle, unmolested by the incessant demands of the outside world. I began to hear the subtle sounds of my own existence, the creak of the floorboards, the gentle tick of an old clock, the distant chirping of birds, each sound a tiny anchor in the present moment. I discovered the profound peace of simply being, of sitting with myself, unburdened by performance or expectation. This quiet allowed me to finally turn inward, to examine the true cost of my pursuit of wealth, to acknowledge the values I had inadvertently sacrificed, the integrity I had compromised in the relentless chase for more. The guilt of my small financial fraud, a corner cut on an expense report many years ago that had felt insignificant at the time, a tiny dishonest act in a world of much larger deceptions, still pricked at me sometimes, a phantom pain, a reminder of the slippery slope I had once been on, but now I confronted it, acknowledged it, understood the moral compromises I had made in pursuit of a false ideal, and resolved to live with integrity, no matter the cost. Quiet promise made to myself in the stillness of my small apartment, a silent vow to reclaim my moral compass, to align my actions with a renewed sense of self-worth. The memory of that small, dishonest act, a paltry sum compared to the vast sums I had later handled, now burned with a surprising intensity, a tangible symbol of the subtle erosion of my character during my ascent. It was a small seed of deceit that, left unchecked, had fertilized a garden of larger, more damaging compromises. I felt the sharp sting of regret, but also a quiet sense of liberation in finally acknowledging it, in allowing its shadow to fall across my newfound path. It was a cleansing fire, a necessary part of the purging process, a step towards authentic self-acceptance. My world had shrunk undeniably, the grand vistas of the city skyline replaced by brick walls and a modest tree outside my window, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze, a small green anchor in my urban landscape. But it had also become sharper, more vibrant, the things that truly mattered. A kind word, a sunny afternoon warming my face, the taste of a perfectly ripe apple, crisp and sweet, the feeling of quiet contentment after a day of honest work. The genuine laughter of a child in the park below, these were the things that filled me now, the small, luminous details of an authentic life, each one a precious gem unearthed from the rubble of my past, each moment a quiet blessing that no amount of money could buy, no amount of success could truly replicate. The large, empty cups of ambition from my past had been replaced by a single warm mug of tea, held close, cherishing its simple comfort, its gentle steam rising like a quiet prayer, a delicate tendril of warmth against the cool air, a tangible connection to the present, to the simple, profound beauty of an unadorned existence. I often sit now, watching the sunrise from my small apartment window, feeling the cool air on my skin, the gentle warmth of the first rays of light across my face. And though the grand views of the city are gone, replaced by a modest cityscape and the rustle of leaves from a nearby tree, a living, breathing testament to nature's quiet persistence, I wouldn't trade it for anything. The price I paid for my soul, the loss, the pain, the betrayal, it was all worth it to find this quiet, unseen joy. This profound sense of peace, this genuine connection to the simple, raw beauty of life itself, a beauty I had once been too blind, too consumed to truly see. I survived, I learned, and I am content with what I have, with who I am, a man finally free from the invisible chains, truly seeing the world for the first time, not through the lens of profit and status, but through the clear, unburdened eyes of gratitude, a profound sense of quiet joy settling deep within my bones, a contentment that feels more valuable than all the gold in the world. If you've ever found yourself chasing a definition of success that ultimately left you feeling empty, what was your moment of realization, and what steps did you take to redefine true value in your own life? Share your journey and insights in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please give it a like, share it with someone who might need to hear it today, and subscribe for more stories of finding meaning beyond the material. I'd also love to know, what's one small, unexpected joy that brought a smile to your face this week?